Hey, folks, this is Jim Horn with another Trevor's Talks. And today we'll be interviewing Mr. Lance Boehmer, who is running for the Traverse City Commission. So let's get right into it. Let's start talking to Lance. Okay, Lance, how you doing, young man?
Hey, I'm good, Jim. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, super, super. Well, as I said in the intro, Lance is running for Traverse City Commissioner. He is one of 5 candidates for 3 openings. I appreciate anybody that runs for any kind of office within any kind of community. It's really a big deal. So, Lance, why don't you give us a little bit of your bio and a little bit of why you're running? And then I've got a few questions I think people might be interested in.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. So everybody, neighbors, hi, Lance Boehmer. I am a candidate for the city commission here on the November 4th ballot in the general election this year. I live in Traverse Heights neighborhood. I'm a homeowner in Traverse Heights. I've lived in Traverse City region since 2021, originally from downstate Michigan in the little teeny tiny town called Harbor Beach, where I grew up. My parents were teachers in that city, but we also spent most of our summers in Charlevoix, which is where my family is all from. And so have lived all over the country. I've lived in Indianapolis, worked in public transit, and then I lived in Denver, worked in software and ran marketing for Subaru of America, out in the West Coast, before moving back to Traverse City, where I now work in software and I lead revenue for a software startup, that's dispersed throughout the country. Why am I running for city commissioner? Well, it kind of started with where I live here in Traverse Heights. I started getting involved just from a standpoint of seeing a lack of infrastructure within our neighborhood. The street that I live on literally doesn't even have sidewalks, and we've got 5 families that live on the street with small kids, and those kids are walking to Traverse Heights Elementary School, and they're walking right down the middle of the street, and it's not very safe. So I started thinking, how can I get more involved? And how can I start, thinking about our infrastructure? How can I help with our housing affordability issues? All while the reason we all live in Traverse City, I think, is because we love its cute charm and small town feel. So how can we do all that while maintaining that feel? And I saw there's a lot of great ideas out there. And since I've lived here, there's just been a lot of talking about these great ideas, right? There's just not been a lot of actually taking action. And as somebody who works in business and leads revenue for a company, everything I do is about taking action and getting results. And so that's why I chose to run for city commissioner, because I believe my leadership skills and my experience working both in the public and private sector lend well to somebody in office who can actually take action for our neighborhoods in the city, so that we can start to actually create real progress in Traverse City.
One of the issues facing Traverse City, and I think it sort of ties back into the housing issue, short-term rentals. Peter Cobbs and Jordan Davis did a recent article on short-term rentals out of the Traverse City Eagle, and these were interesting stats. The average property brings in about $35,000, about $30 million a year across 864 listings. But then they've got compliance issues. The regulatory landscape is inconsistent. Each township does their own deal. Enforcement. What are your thoughts about short-term rentals? Because I know the city commission was dealing with that a few months ago.
Yeah. It's look, I've seen kind of firsthand in my own neighborhood short-term rentals, and we're really a family neighborhood in Traverse Heights. But we also have these short-term rentals, and what they're doing is they're kind of like rotating strangers in and out every few nights, And I have neighbors that talk about right next door to them, they've got short-term rentals, and they feel like they've lost like the sense of connection to kind of knowing who their neighbors are. And so I really think I support, and I'm still figuring this out, right, just by listening and talking to people, but I support kind of a two-part solution to this. I do, it's $30 million a year. That's huge, right? The first kind of part of the solution is really centered around stronger enforcement, using compliance tools. We're already kind of in the city using these tools like Granicus, because we really need to bring short-term rentals into the light. There's a large number of these short-term rentals that are operating under the radar. They're avoiding inspections, licenses, taxes. I think I read in the article that they wrote in the Record Eagle that some are like even listed on Facebook or Craigslist instead of actually being on Airbnb or VRBO, just so that they don't have to have that oversight. So it's a black market at the moment. Like the city loses revenue, neighborhoods lose stability, and responsible short-term rental owners who are actually licensed under the city are getting undercut by the rule breakers, right? So that's why I support, just a stronger enforcement using compliance tools to kind of bring those, first of all, those black market short-term rentals into light. And second, I think there's a way that we can create incentives for short-term rental owners to convert their properties into year-round housing instead of just being a short-term rental. So currently, like if a short-term rental is making about $35,000 annually, it's probably like $7,000 to $10,000 more, just anecdotally speaking from landlords, from long-term rental, how much a long-term rental earns. So the financial pressure on housing is kind of real, right? If you want to rent a house, does it make more financial sense for me to rent to a short-term renter, or does it make more sense for me to rent to a long-term renter? And I think it's one of the reasons we're kind of losing our long-term rentals and our year-round rentals, and really driving up prices in our neighborhoods. So there's this law actually in place, and I think I don't know if it's the right answer, but a couple of neighbors actually brought it to me at my campaign kickoff, and I recently wrote about it on my website, votelance.com. And it's called the Michigan Attainable Housing Act. And what it does is it allows cities or municipalities to implement a tax incentive so that homeowners who maybe own up to 4 rental units could actually lower the taxes on a non-homestead property, if the caveat, if they agree to long-term rent to folks making, and the city can decide on this number, but it's up to 120% of the AMI, the area median income. So maybe we even make that number stronger at more like 80% of the area median income. If they rent long-term to people making this amount of money. So I think we can kind of, two birds, one stone. First, bring everybody into the light so that we have stronger enforcement and compliance. And then second, incentivize people who, okay, we've just brought all these into the light, and they're like, oh shoot, we're going to, we're going to start having to pay more. Here's an incentive so you don't have to pay more.
Super. That sort of ties back into the housing affordability in the workplace or the workforce housing shortage, which we certainly experience. This is an expensive place to live.
Yeah.
We got soaring home prices. I know when I was talking to Noel Mokenberg, the Grand Traverse County prosecutor, they have difficulty getting lawyers up here to work in the prosecutor's office. Do you see that the short-term rental may be tying back into the housing affordability Is that something you think they probably, those two things can work together?
Yeah, I absolutely think they could work together, right? If we've got so many short-term rentals that are flying under the radar, um, first of all, they're probably paying, they might even be paying a homestead tax, not even a non-homestead tax rate. So the community ultimately is not benefiting, right? That's 18 mils each for each property that the TCAPS isn't getting. So if we can bring them into light and say, hey, you've got to pay your fair share of tax, and then at the same time incentivize them to say, hey, if you don't want to pay so much tax, here's this incentive that the state has put in place specifically for communities like ours. Frankfurt actually, as a small tourist town, just implemented this a couple of years ago. I think we can take a decent amount of illegal short-term rentals off the market and convert them into potentially long-term affordable housing, right? All at the same time, without having to build more, but rather just use the facilities we already have. Right? Use the housing that we already have in place. So we're not doing anything to jeopardize the character of our small town and our community. We're just using the housing stock we've already got in place and transferring it into long-term rentals. Look, housing affordability regionally is kind of at the foundation for everything else in this community. I've talked to nurses. I was talking to some firefighters yesterday, service workers, teachers. Those are the people that keep the city running, right? And they're all telling me that they can't, or they're having a hard time affording to live here anymore. It's even an issue for retirees on fixed incomes whose property taxes continue to increase every year. So it's not just really a housing issue, but it's kind of a community stability issue. And if we can't house the people that care for us, teach our kids, serve our food, drive the buses, we start to kind of break apart what makes Traverse City work, and what keeps us having that small town charm. I'm a big proponent of doing the research, and I think we've done the research. And right now we need action. And I'm ready to help lead that action.
Super. One of the major complaints I have about going into, I live right here in Garfield Township, but driving on 14.
Oh, yeah.
All you got to do is do that. It's like the Ho Chi Minh Trail over there. What are your thoughts about infrastructure and roadway improvements? A lot of the city streets probably haven't been done since the early 2000s, and they're really overdue for a lot of work. What are your thoughts, especially about where we get the financing for some of this?
Yeah. I mean, we've got funds in place to essentially repair and maintain our infrastructure. But right now, there's not a whole lot of policy guidance on prioritization. It's more of like, we're going to put it in the capital improvement plan, which is a 6-year plan for the city. And then hopefully that gets approved. There's not a whole lot of community engagement around that as well. So, and living in Traverse Heights, like my street still, like I mentioned earlier, doesn't even have sidewalks. And it's, watching kids walk to school. It's not really acceptable in a city like Traverse City to not have sidewalks on all of our streets. I continuously hear from neighbors, like, why do we have to completely blow out my entire street and my sidewalks all at the same time? And I'm speaking about 11th Street. I have some friends who live on 11th Street who are elderly and they have mobility issues. They literally can't even walk out their house right now. If you've not gone over and checked that out, you should check out the construction project. I'm sure it'll be wonderful when it's done. But why can't we just maintain better instead of just completely blow everything out of the water at any given time? And so recently, over the last 9 months, I raised my hand to serve on the Complete Streets ad hoc committee with the city. And this was a couple city commissioners, a couple community members, Grand Traverse Safe Streets Alliance, and then a number of different just community members. And what we did was we brought everybody together to kind of lay the groundwork for how we design and maintain streets going forward. So it wasn't wholly about theory. It was rather about creating a policy and putting policy into action that involves citizens and involves neighborhoods at its center. And what a complete streets policy means is that we stop rebuilding roads the old way, right? We stop just blowing everything out of the water, and we start making improvements to them sooner, making them safer, more connected, and usable for everyone. So what that means is it means whether you're driving, you're biking, you're walking, or you're pushing a stroller, right? The streets should be safe for you. From a funding standpoint, we've already seen the commission dedicate, which actually came out of this committee, was dedicate 1% of the general fund towards complete street redevelopment, and towards building complete streets, which is major. And there's other funding mechanisms out there. So policy alone kind of isn't enough. We need really a real roadmap on how we fund these projects. In my career, professionally, even in the start of my career, working in public transit, I helped secure more than $60 million in regional and federal transit and infrastructure funding for several large projects. So I know how to move projects from plan really to reality from a funding standpoint. And kind of as a commitment, as a future commissioner, I'll keep pushing for smarter investments in the places people live, not just the center of the city where tourists visit. I think it's from an infrastructure standpoint, it's pretty simple. Go back to the basics, safer streets, connected sidewalks, ADA accessibility, all as the standard, and then use smart funding mechanisms to make that happen.
Super. So as we wrap up, what would you like the voters to know? In other words, why vote for Lance?
Yeah, housing affordability, infrastructure, improvement and concentration are two things that we need to take action on now instead of just keep talking about it, I should say. My whole career has been about actually getting results and moving things forward, and not just talking about them or creating ideas. It's about finding actionable ways we can get things done, and at the same time involve every single one of us around all of the neighborhoods, and every citizen who wants to be involved should be involved. As a commissioner, I'm committed to listening and engaging with the community in order to create these real solutions that make a better Traverse City tomorrow.
Super.
If you want, I would encourage you to go to my website. It's really simple. It's just votelance.com. You can read more about my policy thoughts. And again, these are just ideas at the moment, right? I'm not elected. So there's a section, if you go to issues on my website, that actually asks for your opinion. So you tell me, what are the issues that matter to you most? Because ultimately, I work for you.
Well, thank you. And Lance, thank you very, very much for running. I'm sure the citizens of Traverse City appreciate your running. It's always a tough gig to step off the curb onto local politics. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Jim. I appreciate you. Thanks to everybody.